Okay, we're back for real this time. Honest to goodness. Welcome back in. Sorry about all the delays. Made some tweaks to the audio this morning that really jacked things up for the audio in the stream to the point where it was total just garbage. You couldn't understand anything that was going on in the background. So hopefully everything's good now. I've done some testing this morning. Added in some additional filters, done some additional tweaking. It's definitely there's some learning curve here in terms of setting up audio in a way that actually works well across the board, so that I stream with others nearby in the same office, so at least part of it is blocking out, trying to minimize the audio that's coming across between microphones, while the others are streaming when we're doing collaborative projects, that kind of thing. So the cardioid mics tend to be more sensitive in terms of the position as well, and I guess I didn't realize quite how sensitive it was in terms of moving to the right or the left. So just general awareness of the equipment that you're using and the filters, if any, that are being applied and what they're doing makes a big difference. So hopefully it's good now. I want to go back through. I had to basically delete the previous stream entirely because it was, like I said, it was just completely garbled. So I want to go through, recover what I attempted to cover this morning, which was going over the more current builds that I have. This is actually my third account, because I was trying to reinvigorate the game to some degree. I've been playing for a number of years and have not really lost interest, but just looking for a way of gaining that new experience again. So I decided to create a third account. I have two others that I covered yesterday that are kind of maxed out on most of the stuff they're doing. So the third account gives me the ability to go through and do achievements again and grind for the gear and all the normal stuff that you do as far as progressing in the game. So that's where we are today. This third account is the one that it's most active at this point because I'm building it up and gaining CP. So I wanted to go through the builds that I have over here, briefly kind of touch on the armory system, why I no longer need to have 18 characters. Because essentially with the armory system, you can now very easily swap builds, skills, morphs, CP, all of that. So essentially what I've done on this third account, I have a few down here you see. These are remnants from prior to the armory release, so I started doing my normal thing where I would start another of the same class in order to expand out for a different build so that I can theory craft without having to completely get rid of the old build. But then the armory system was released, and so there became no real point really in having these around. I just haven't deleted them yet, is the only reason they're still here. So I have 4 that are fully leveled. They have most of what they need at this point. There's still some things to unlock on some of these, but with the 4 that I've done, and then the 5th here is the Sork, I have several builds on each of these, and they house the gear that they need for each of those builds, and then the armory system allows you to easily swap between them as needed, which is really cool, very handy. There have been times when I've popped into a dungeon and we lose a tank, for instance, and I may have come in as a DD. I can literally swap over to a tank build on the spot, and now we have a tank. So armory system is a great addition to the game, and it saves me from having to level 18 separate characters, three for the mag stam and tank for each of the classes. So it's a good deal overall. I wanted to start with the Warden. We'll just kind of work our way backwards up to the top here. I was going to start with the Warden and cover that first in this video, go through the builds that I have and that I've set up, and these are more current than the builds I showed you yesterday. just to kind of explain playstyle and kind of how I build things out. So the Jesters Festival started today. It's kind of a fun one. I believe this is one of the ones that offers double XP, which is a great time. There are certain festivals that they offer throughout the year that have a double XP bonus. And those are great times to level. If you have a new character that you want to get to max level or just want to grind CP, that double XP makes a big difference. It's just built in. It's usually something simple. It's either built in by default or it's something, some goofy mechanic where you drink from a mug or eat a piece of cake or something to that effect. You got new crown crates up too, so we'll check those out in a separate stream. So I'm not going to cover that today. For anyone that's coming in, if you're not aware, you can get free houses in the game. There are small little apartments that you can get in a number of the main towns. So you can get a free house, and once you have a free house, you can go into the crown store underneath furniture special, and there's an armory station in there. It's completely free, it doesn't cost anything. And once you have that, then it looks like this. You can click it, and they give you 2 slots by default. I've got an additional one that I picked up here, but they give you 2 by default that you can use to add in individual builds, and the build itself will capture your CP, it captures your attributes, the gear that you have equipped at the time, all the weapons and the jewelry and armor, as well as your currently slotted skills and the morphs specifically. It also captures curses, so vampire and werewolf, if you have either of those active, or it'll just say none if you don't. And as you switch between them, if you equip a different build, it essentially will just replace all of these items with whatever the new setup has. So I can swap between, here's my tank build, which she's currently wearing her stamina DPS build, so I can easily swap between them just by selecting the build that I want to go to and hitting E. And that will completely swap my gear. See here, now we're wearing completely different things, as well as the skills to match whatever you have set up in the build. So it's really easy to use, extremely handy if you just want to swap back and forth, and really avoids the need now to level multiple characters in order to have different builds, because you can just literally buy another slot in the armory, go out and do your respecs for CP, for attributes, everything, get all your gear set up for the new build. Once you have it set up, I can go into an empty slot and I can just hit R and it will save all of those new settings. So very easy way to theory craft and create numerous builds all on the same character class. So we can start with, this is the tank build I've got set up. Most of the characters I have right now, I have a tank build for, purely for running dungeons. I like running dungeons, and tanks have the lowest queue times as far as the wait times. Queuing in Group Finder, I tend to pick up groups for the pledges quite often, so it's nice. I like tanking, but it also makes the queue times quicker. So I have a tank build set up for virtually all of these. I think all of these have a tank build. Not necessarily the greatest in terms of the tank build itself, but I tend to go for trying new things on tanks. Tanks are somewhat experimental for me. You'll find leeching on most of the tank builds. I like that as a base set. It's good for survivability. I find it's it's a good balance. And then usually there's a secondary set. So in this case, I'm running leeching, sword and board on both bars. I've got sword and board, leeching on the front, and then the back bar I'm actually running kind marchers. This is a newer set that was released recently. Offers random debuffs on the back that lasts for, each one lasts for 18 seconds with an 8-second cooldown. So as long as I'm on the back bar every 8 seconds, I can proc this just from any direct damage. So I can just whack something with the mace, and that'll proc this. And then leeching is on the front only. So the beauty of these split bar setups is it essentially opens up 2 additional slots that typically in the past I will, because training makes a great one piece. And in this case, I'm running the Queen's piece here. So that's my one piece of trainee, and then the other slot I'm running a mythic in this case, Torque of Tonal Constancy, in addition to being able to wear a full monster helm. Obviously it depends on the set as to whether it will work for this, but if I'm spending the bulk of my time on the front bar, which I am in this case, that's going to give me access to leeching. I've got 2 pieces here. I've got a ring here. 2 rings here, it looks like. So that's 2 pieces here, a 3rd piece. So I've got 3 pieces between the body and the jewelry, and then the other 2 pieces are on the front bar. So on the front bar, leeching will be active. And when I switch to the back bar, then here kind marchers will be active. But kind marchers, the reason this works well as a back bar set is because it offers 18-second uptime on each of the debuffs that's occurring. It has an 8-second cooldown, so I can technically proc up to 3 different debuffs. So generally speaking, I will try to be on my back bar every 8 seconds and hit something in order to proc to get a different debuff going. But once they're up, they last for 18 seconds. So that gives me plenty of time to flip back to my front bar in order to activate leeching and then do my normal tanking. And by having this split bar setup, you see we have 2 pieces of kind marcher here, and then up here we have 1, 2, 3. The other 3 pieces are on the body. So we have 1 set active on the front bar, 1 set active on the back bar, but they're not simultaneously active. And by doing that, that opens up the additional 2 slots that I can use for typically a trainee and a mythic, or maybe 2 trainee pieces if it's a magicka build. Plus the addition of the monster helm. You can run, excuse me, you can run a monster helm, which is nice. So it works quite well. Rakugams, this is probably one of the first times that I've run Rakugams, even though it's been around for ages. I've never, typically I haven't seen this as being an overly strong set. I guess it was okay. It does offer some group utility, but it's been nerfed a bit over the years. The main thing in terms of the tank build for this was I already had other tank builds going, and I wanted to try some new things that I hadn't run before. So Rakugams seemed like a good fit. Warden, this build specifically it's a tank build, but it offers some utility in terms of off healing. Warden specifically is quite good at that, and so I figured this kind of fit into that healing aspect as well as resources for the group. So Torque of Tonal Constancy on this build, you'll notice we're both sword and board, so it's primarily stamina focused. For tank builds, the bulk of the tank builds I'm running, I do focus more on stamina than magicka, unless it's like a DK. DK is definitely more magicka focused. But where possible, I like running more stamina because stamina ultimately is crucial for tanks. Magicka is normally auxiliary, so that's like a utility. That pool is used more for utility than healing, generally speaking. Not in all cases, but in this case. So Torque of Tonal Constancy as a mythic in this particular instance is another one of those things that I don't typically run, but for this build specifically, the Warden's skills are set up to where I believe everything in here is stamina. No, this is magicka. But this, I run this occasionally if I have available magicka, but this is primarily here for the minor evasion. So it's just a passive. I guess Ice Fortress is magicka as well. Primarily, it's the off heal, because this will last for 25 seconds. It's the off heal here, which heals me as well as somebody else, and it's a health-based heal. So it's a really solid heal in terms of potency, and it's good off healing for someone else in the group as well as me. The Rakugums popped up there. In addition, I've got the Enchanted Forest for the back bar ultimate. Shield Ball is for emergencies. I don't tend to run that or use that too often. Only if I need, if it's things are going badly with the pickup group and I need to res someone, I might run that. But for the most part, I'm keeping my ultimate for Enchanted Forest, which then is generating more ultimate as well as offering healing to the group. So between these two things and the Rakugums, she's bringing some good off healing to kind of help out if there's a healer in the group, or oftentimes maybe there's 3 damage dealers or something if we're not doing a group finder setup. So some good utility for the group. Got CC through Turn Evil. This is removing snares as well as stamina, so sustain. This is for the group as long as they're within the 8 meters. This is going to give everybody the major resolve, and it gives me minor protection, so it's kind of a combination. We covered this is minor evasion. It occasionally does come in handy if I'm trying to get through a dungeon more quickly or an area more quickly. Minor vulnerability with this. Obviously, major and minor breach. Shield if I need it, plus this reduces my block cost. And then Silver Leash for pulling in the mobs. So it's pretty straightforward. Fairly easy to play. Of course, once you heal, being a Warden, anybody you're healing is also getting minor toughness, so you're boosting yourself as well as them with that. And again, because the off healing, you're often going to heal other members of the group. So it's pretty fun. Not too complicated as far as the setup. Leeching is passive, it works on its own. Kind Marcher, you gotta flip to the back bar every 8 seconds and hit something. But you're usually back there anyway in order to CC or heal or rebuff. So that is the tank build. Torque of Tonal Constancy I was going to mention. So the reason that this works well is while stamina is less than 50%, you get mag recovery to 450, and then vice versa. If your magicka is less than 50, it boosts your stam recovery. The reason that this works well on this particular build is because it is primarily stamina focused. You do have a few skills here that are magicka, and so it's if you're off healing or you're buffing the group, I can hit this again. You see the magicka pool very easily drops below 50% because it's just the default magicka pool. There's no points put into magic or anything, so it's a small pool. So it's easy to proc tonal constancy if you happen to need stam recovery, a higher stam recovery. It's an easy thing to gain. So you're trading magicka for stamina, in essence. I haven't found a huge need for the additional recovery, but there are times it'll just happen by default. And you're looking for a one piece to fill the slot. I wanted to try something new, so I opted for this versus one of the other mythics. So that's the tank build. CP, this is a Third account, I'm still earning CP, so CP is kind of up in the air. It's also, at least just for some people, it's personal preference as to how you allocate CP. For tanks, generally speaking, I go with Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, some combination of Unassailable, and Bulwark is nice to have if you don't have the resistances. In this case, she's a Nord, so she already has additional resistances. I don't take this. This area is definitely one that I would recommend getting first if you can. The 20 points here is 10% damage reduction. That's just passive. It's active. It's active. It's passively there and active all the time. And then this is 2% direct damage reduction. So tanks are definitely defensive, focusing on damage reduction from damage over time or direct damage. These are single target attacks, and this is AoE. So this is it's a pretty nice setup for tanks. If you're starting out like I am, where your CP is a little bit lower and you don't have a bunch of extra points. And then over in this tree, it's pretty much about the health. Normally I'll take for tanks, that just gives you additional health. Over here, this is more about blocking damage, so it's 20% mitigation. And that's while in combat, increase the amount of damage you can block 4% per stage, reduces movement speed. So it comes with the with some snare, but that's 20% block mitigation. That seems like a no-brainer to me. And then I've got points into health, because health, especially for a health-based heal, and a tank in general, is always going to be a good thing. And the other two areas generally that I try to focus on are cost reduction. So your resources are there. Cost reduction is, this is recovery, but the reduction here, status effect, you're going to be under a status effect fairly often, so this will help reduce your overall costs, which includes your blocking, dodge rolling, that kind of thing as well. So green tree I don't really go into because it's just personal preference. If I run dungeons a lot, having treasure hunter is nice. Steed's Blessing, the additional speed, again, movement speed is a nice thing to have. This just buffs my food. So this one is up to you as far as what you want to do. So that's the tank build. And then I'll switch over to the DPS. And this is a completely different setup, different gear, everything. And for this one, she's a Nord and a Warden, so I kind of went with, there's some thematic elements to it. I wanted to do something with ice, and Ice Heart was changed a while back to where it's just crit chance now when they combine crit. And if you have decent crit in a build, this will actually proc quite often, and when it does, you're getting the damage shield that does additional frost damage out in an AoE pattern of 5 meters. So this is a fun thematic piece, but it's also a decent amount of protection. It's just an additional shield, and it's dealing frost damage, which fits with the theme. New Moon is a base set that I run on a lot of my damage builds. I still like it. It's brainless. It's just flat stats. So there's no gimmicks or anything with it. So I do like that. And then I combined that on this account specifically. I don't normally do trials, but I actually briefly kind of dove into some trials. There were some friends that were looking for some assistance, so I said, hey, you know, why not? And jumped in enough times into Hellraw that I actually managed to pick up Vicious Ophidian pieces. So this is a great set if you can get a hold of it. If you don't like doing trials, there are other options, for sure. I advocate for it only because it's a really solid set if you're looking for sustain and damage combined. The additional speed when you're working through mobs after killing an enemy is nice. The movement speed, the stamina restoration, and the 8% cost reduction to all of your stamina abilities is fantastic. So really good for sustain. It's bringing crit and minor slayer as well for the damage, and then you combine that with the new moon that's giving you the additional pen and the weapon damage and the crit. I found this to be a really, really solid combination. And then you got one infused weapon damage, and then the other two are just robust with weapon damage. Running dual daggers. I still like dual daggers, at least for the time being. I prefer Nirnhoned on the one and then Precise on the other to kind of boost the crit a little bit more. And then the dual daggers themselves are also boosting the crit. And on this one, I actually did some testing. The back bar, normally I would do Maelstrom Bow. Is a fairly typical thing on a Stam build. But again, to tie into the kind of ice theme and Warden theme, when I tested this, I was surprised that the damage was comparable to what I was getting from the Maelstrom Bow. So this allowed me to incorporate even more ice theme, and it was kind of a fun... So it ends up being kind of a hybrid, a little bit of a hybrid build. Definitely stamina focused, but bringing the ice elements is kind of a fun factor. So I was really, really happy with this overall. It's fun to play, definitely fun to play, and the damage and the sustain is equally solid. Yeah, so the weapon crit is sitting at 45, which is, you know, you can certainly get higher, but that's a decent number. At least for my builds, it's not all about crit. I like a balance between damage and pen and crit. So this is it's a nice balance. So skill-wise, I'm running the bear on both bars. The bear was another thing that I decided to try. I've tried it in the past and I wasn't as impressed with it, but when I did testing this go around, I found the bear was actually, the damage output was quite good. The biggest trick with the bear I found is keeping it alive in harder content. It does tend to get squashed a lot, and so you go to cast your ultimate and realize, oh, my bear's gone, so you have to bring it back up again. But other than that, the damage actually is quite good, and the cost of ultimate is 78, so it's pretty cheap. Other than that, running Camo Hunter on the front for the additional crit and the additional 3% from being a Fighter's Guild ability, gives you additional 3% damage. And for dungeons where someone else is tanking, the flanking that you're gaining from Minor Berserk, you're getting an additional 5% there. Subterranean Assault. Main spammable in this case is Bloodthirst. I prefer generally using Bloodthirst over Rapid Strikes from a Morph standpoint. The difference in the damage, there is a small difference in damage. Rapid Strikes will put out a bit more damage, but the healing that you get from this for survivability is actually quite nice. So the more damage you're doing, the more healing you're getting back from this, so it helps in groups where there's less heals available. Deadly Cloak, obviously that's just for protection and damage out, and then I've got Whirling Blades for the AoE, for mobs, clearing mobs, and the Execute that's built in. Back bar, we've got Bullnetch for negative effect removal, Major Brutality, and Stamina Sustain. And this is technically, being that it does Brutality and Sorcery, this will technically boost the damage that we're doing with the Frost side of things too. So the Frost skills, the Frost Wall of Elements here will be boosted as a result of that as well, when that's active. Because we are running a backbar Destro Staff, this gives access to Major Breach, which is really, really nice. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know the Magicka Morph of this offers breach, I believe, but the stamina does not. So getting access to breach, I guess you could do it through caltrops, would give you that option on a stam build, which is a nice, it's AoE that way. So this is single target, but this is also free to cast. And the updated version of this, it used to reapply itself, but they changed it to where every 6 seconds now you're gaining a status effect. Burning, chilled, or concussion. So I guess it's random as to what is affecting it, but this is free to cast. I can put it on multiple enemies at once. It fits in with the theme of, well, not really the theme, it fits in with the Destro, because we are using a Destro. So it's easy to cast, it lasts for a minute, so, and the major breach is definitely going to boost your damage, having that extra pen. Growing Swarm, this offers minor vulnerability and a bleed. It's an AoE, so this is a good skill just for mobs. And then we have Resolving Vigor for the heal. So it's definitely a fun build. This is another one where I got to use sets that I hadn't used before. Vicious Ophidian specifically was something that I hadn't been able to run before because I hadn't run dungeons, so it's nice to finally be able to play with that. And thematically speaking, it's just fun, just because you've got a lot of ice damage going out, and feels very fluid, especially when you're working through mobs because of the additional speed from Major Expedition when you're killing things. So. Okay, I can touch on CP again. This is only sitting on 800 something, so it's not as optimal as it could be. But I can kind of run through how I've got it set up right now. So this is generally used for dungeons, normally where you have a tank that's going to be pulling mobs, taunting bosses, etc. So Backstabber is a solid option if you're looking for a way of increasing your damage. That's a decent increase in the damage. This is not something I recommend for solo because it requires flanking for your positioning in order to gain that bonus. But when you're going through 4-man content and you have a tank that can taunt mobs and bosses, this is actually a nice option to take. Fighting Finesse is going to boost the crit damage that I am doing, as well as the healing. And the crit is high enough, 45%. I mean, there are definitely higher crit builds, but 45% is high enough that this is worth taking, in my opinion. And then basic boosting, where damage over time effects, as well as the direct damage, because you have some of both in this build, so this is going to boost the damage that both of those are doing. And then in here, you can see I'm trying to build out some of the passives. One short on that one. This is the problem with starting over, is the CP is lower, so I don't have the CP to be able to max these things out, but generally once you get over about 1200 CP and on, it becomes a lot easier to max out some of these passive abilities, and that definitely helps with the damage aspect of things, or healing, wherever you're putting the points. Okay, I think that about covers it. I don't have a Magicka build for the Warden just yet. I went through some of the older ones that I had put together on my other accounts, just previous builds that I put together, but I don't have anything set up for this particular character right now. That might probably something I'll work on in the future, but for now that wraps up the Warden builds and kind of the brief introduction to the armory and how it works.